Hello, hello, hello. I am not known for my singing. Um, but hello, my fellow randoms. My name is Kev Duffy, who is not known for his singing. And welcome to this, our 21st episode of What's Your Random podcast, where I discover and celebrate independent creativity, independent and individual creativity, from the inception of an idea to the process and practicalities of bringing it to life. You have an idea, how do you get it to stop being just an idea and be something that you could actually share with people other than just describing it? That's what I'm trying to get to the root of here on this podcast. And welcome in the new year. I took a short hiatus to go over some things, obviously rearrange my office. I have a new, not really location, but position in the same room. And I am still working through which equipment I want to use in the first full season of What's Your Random podcast. Again, welcome and Happy New Year. And thanks for joining me and my guest, because the guest is the star of this show, and we have a rotating assortment of them. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe, obviously, but also share it to people who may benefit from hearing from one or all of our guests. I think I personally always learn at least a little bit from each guest, and I think there are people out there who will benefit from the podcast, and that's one of many reasons why I'm doing it. But to achieve that goal, your sharing the episodes goes an extremely long way in helping us to grow our audience. So thank you in advance. As usual, I'll hang on a little bit at the end of this episode after my guest hangs up to just go over some key takeaways, and if there are any areas where I've changed the podcast or any areas where I think I can change the podcast to improve it moving forward. So hang on tight after my guest hangs up for that. Without further ado, joining me on What's Your Random podcast today is Daniel Christophersen for our first episode in this new year. And Daniel's joining me to talk about the Fantastical Millipede, a teenage girl superhero versus the real world. And it's a short film he's doing for his senior thesis in film school. And he's doing it with his partner Oscar and many other collaborators, and distributing it or otherwise promoting it through his production company, Far Away Films UK. And it was really a blast talking to Daniel about his experience. He was not originally in the film world, but quit a job in other industry to pursue his dream in film. And he produces really high quality cinematic shorts, and you could check them out on their website, which is up in the corner and in the show notes, to watch some teasers for those short films. And hopefully once they run the festival circuit, they'll be available to watch online, because he definitely approaches film with a high level, a high cinematic quality that I appreciate, and explores interesting ideas. And we talk about how he arrives at those ideas over the course of our conversation. So I hope that you enjoy this conversation with Daniel Christophersen. Enjoy the random. It's going well. How about yourself?
Things adjust here. Here we go. I'm all right. I'm coping okay. It's like day 5 of the new lockdown. I don't know. It always, like, you lose it so fast.
Yeah. It's hard to believe that, like, the overall situation is coming up on a year.
Yeah.
In March.
Crazy.
So what are the latest restrictions mean for you? Are you like in house arrest essentially?
So it's hard to say, because we've been like going through these like tiers, and like every tier seems to be the exact same. But like we were in tier 4 and now we're in tier 5. And I think that means you can no longer socialize at all. But don't hold me to that. I seem to be getting the rules wrong, but something like that. But either way, I think we're meant to just literally only leave to go to the shops to buy food now. I think that is the rules.
Wow. And so you're not supposed to even hang out with one person socially distanced,
I
or
think you can do one person outside for 1 hour, but like I don't know for sure. Like there's
right.
differing accounts. So, and now apparently this is when the police are going to start like being tougher on us. So I
Right.
don't know. It's a risk. It's a risk to go out there.
So for those police listening, Daniel is cooped up in his home following all of the guidelines.
Yeah.
He's being even harder on himself because uh, it's hard
Just
to understand where the
out of
guidelines fall. So
uncertainty, I'm just going for do nothing. Play
right,
it safe.
right.
But yeah, it's weird. It's just like it sucks a lot, and we're all so sick of it. It doesn't help that we have like a terrible government here who have like struggled every step of the way. That's made things worse than it needed to be.
You're speaking to an American. Let me
Oh
remind
yeah,
you.
exactly. So we're in the same boat, right? So like, it didn't have to be this way. It is this way. It's going to be longer for us than everyone else because of that. But yeah,
Hopefully, despite the current situation and circumstances, there's a eventual light at the end of the tunnel, wherever that end may be.
Yeah. I hope so. I hope it's a
As
good
long
summer.
as we're seeing something glistening.
Yeah, I hope so.
On the horizon. Well, welcome to What's Your Random. I hope you don't mind. I already started recording.
Oh, that's okay. Okay.
It's
good to know, actually. Good to know. I haven't said anything too incriminating yet, have I? Like I kept the law all on recording. Okay, cool.
Yes. And if you do want me to delete that, we can.
I think I'm safe. I also hope the police aren't like fans of this show. Rating. I don't know, maybe they are.
They don't have my sticker on their bumper and like wearing the pin on their lapel.
We can only hope they don't.
Well, they might learn something because, as you know, I speak with creative people like yourself. So welcoming to What's Your Random today, Daniel Christophersen. And he is a producer and director and writer and probably wearing many other hats that we're going to explore over the course of our conversation with Far Away Films in the UK. And he recently successfully funded the Fantastical Millipede, and after funding it, promptly filmed it. I understand filming is done and you're in post-production. So that's my introduction. Welcome to the show. We could carry on now.
That's the best introduction I've had in my whole life. So that was good. Yeah.
And it's all true, all factual, and all very recent history
and legal. And I'm a good citizen. So those are the key facts to remember.
Yeah, and so you finished. You started your Kickstarter right around my birthday, actually. So it's easy enough to remember. Yeah. You finished right before Christmas, and then you filmed soon thereafter, or maybe with a little bit of overlap.
So before all that, so like we started the Kickstarter like less than a month before shooting. We shot the last week before Christmas, and it all happened super quick. But originally it's because the film was going to shoot in April. We had a studio booked. We were doing like these practical wall crawling effects in a studio space. We're building like an upside down room and then flipping the camera to pull it off. And we had a studio space booked, but then because of the virus outbreak, the pandemic, that all got postponed and cancelled. So we then had to wait until December to finally shoot the film.
I see.
I think that's why we were able to kind of go ahead so fast, because a lot of the prep work had already been done back in the start of the year. And then,
Very nice. So go ahead and tell anybody listening what the project is about and what you're making it for.
So it's my graduation film for my master's course at London Film School. And the premise is, if you had superpowers, but in the real world, we don't have supervillains like the Green Goblin, like Thanos, for you to try and fight and save the world with. Our problems are things like poverty, inequality, corruption, and basically, how could you use the ability to climb walls and punch hard and jump high and fly against problems like that? Like they have nothing to offer, stuff like that. And so we have this young superhero. She's a 16-year-old girl, Hannah Harper. She's got Spider-Man-like powers, and she wants so badly to make the world a better place. And she feels like she should because she's a superhero, but she has nothing to offer. And so she's just like perennially frustrated in our film, trying to figure out what she can be doing to help.
Yeah, I was struck by the project just because it is very timeless, but at the same time very pertinent to the world in which we live. And you highlight the word in your introduction and your description on the Kickstarter of powerlessness, despite being so powerful. And I think a lot of us can relate to that, especially over the last year and into the new year. Unfortunately, I think we all were hoping that we would flip a switch and it would be 2021 and all of the woes of 2020 would be behind us. But I think it's worth exploring even more so for those reasons. And I wonder if you wrote the story during or before the pandemic, and how the pandemic maybe shaped. So you said you were going to start filming in April. I could assume based on that you wrote it beforehand, but over this year, how did things change in the story or your approach emotionally to it, if at all?
I think I wrote it a long time ago. Really, I wrote the first draft like end of last summer, with a view to shooting it early at the start of 2020. And it was like a long process finding that script. Actually, started off in a completely different format, a different form. I was talking to a couple of friends at film school, like really good friends, and we we're kind of having that talk. We were like, if you could do anything in film, what would you want to do? And when I was asked to answer that question, I was like thinking about kind of my life. And I was a kid who would sit in his room and draw Spider-Man comics by himself, writing many, many of these issues and drawing on these issues. And it sort of felt like it'd be quite like classic film story if I ended up one day involved creatively on a Spider-Man movie. And so they were like, well, write one then. And I was like, right, okay. So then I wrote my own Spider-Man feature script for fun. And the basis of that story was Spider-Man versus Donald Trump. And the idea was, what stance would he take against the president, who, as I think it's quite easy for us to say, and we should all admit out loud, he's not a good guy. He's not a good guy at all. He's a horrible person, but he's a man in a position of power. He's technically the law. He's technically our leader. Where would a person with like morals like Spider-Man stand in that story? Like, what choice does he take? What decision does he take? And then it was a case of like, if my graduation film if I was imagining that was going to be my last ever film ever made, I was like, well, it should be something to do with superheroes. I've grown up with that world. I love that world. Even though it's like forbidden to talk about it at film school, like I wanted to do something with superheroes. And I had this script and I was like, what if I adapted it? I took it from 120 pages to 10 pages and got to the core of that. What would it be like? And it was hard to figure out what that should specifically be. My idea was we have politicians in the UK like called Nigel Farage and Boris Johnson, people like that, who you really want to punch them in the face. You do. But like, it won't help anything. If anything, it'll make it worse. And so the script was kind of about this young British superhero up against those kind of politicians, and about building to that moment of like punching them in the face or not, and using your power or not. And then it kind of went for different drafts. That scene, could never figure out that scene because like, how you don't want to humanize them, right? You don't want to humanize the person representing a bad person. But if you don't humanize your villain, they're a terrible character. And so that scene never felt right because it was always like, I wanted them to be a pure villain, how I see the real version. And then it just became a really kind of hokey scene. It didn't seem to work. So eventually it became a bit more like just keeping that villain character in the background of things. So you would see the causes of their actions, like the way people are hurt by that in day-to-day life. And then they were in the background of that. They were always pulling the strings, but you never saw them and have that confrontation directly. And I guess in terms of like when it was the coronavirus, like, Boris Johnson, say, was making our life worse by his inaction and his incompetence. but it wasn't like you were directly going up against him day to day. You were facing the consequences of actions. And I think the script took on more of that form where it was like about the consequences of the villain's actions and trying to fight those actions rather than fighting the villain itself. I don't know if that made any sense. I spoke for a long time.
No, it was yeah, extremely articulate and well said. And I think it's a position that like we would be able to relate to a lot more if Marvel did something more along those lines. I'm not saying they should or that they're in a position to, but I think that this story, the way that you describe it and the positioning and the motivation behind it really resonates with me, as I'm sure it will resonate with a lot of other folks. So you had like pretty much a feature length film and you condensed it down over time and kind of going through these motions of looking at the real world and how a smaller scale hero could deal with them when they're not dealing with a immediate foe that they could punch in the face and have the immediate effect of defeating the villain. And I don't want you to spoil the film, so I'm not going to ask you to. So instead, I'll ask you, how do you condense such a large story, 120 minutes worth, down to, counting a minute per page, something is it going to be about 10 minutes or so?
Yeah, I imagine.
Yeah. How do you go through chopping and also maintaining the meaning and the essence and not losing, the core of what you're trying to convey?
I think in this case, what made it easier is that, the feature version of it had the protagonist relationship with, 5-6 different other characters. The mother, boss, friends, villain, all these different people that they interacted with. I don't like interactions are alongside the same theme. They still kind of go to the same thematic idea. But when it came to doing it as a small script, it was like, no, it's going to have to be just one relationship. One key relationship that is at the core of this. And then you have like smaller things happening, but they're not really the key emotional beat to the whole thing. So in this case, it ends up being just the relationship between the protagonist and their mother. That became the one that was the focus of the script and where the main scenes are happening. And the rest is kind of like stunts and little gags and little bits that kind of complement that. But at its core, it's about a mother-daughter relationship. And that's how it became condensed, more focused. And even in an earlier stage when it was still a short film, there was still a school friend and there was still the villain. And that's when it was like, I'm trying to do too much of 2 little pages, and I'm trying to keep it down to 12, 15 pages. And I'm like scrapping away for lines and deleting action lines because I think it's going to make a difference. And really, no, it's about like trying to focus on that one relationship in the film.
Yeah, I think I had a similar experience. I shared with you that I worked on a film project and it was kind of, I had like way too many ideas and inspirations. And I wrote like just this crazy stream of consciousness, like 100-page, I don't know if it was 100-page, something, it was many, many pages. And then I looked at it and I was like, oh, this is a heap of crap. And then I looked at it and I condensed it down to bullet points that made and wrote it into a short, and then I re-expanded it into a feature length. So coming from that perspective, I wonder now, knowing what you know now about the characters and the process of expansion and contraction of the story and the themes, do you think it would change? Do you think you would change the script much if you re-expanded it to a feature length film?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I think when you've got more space, use it wisely. I think definitely like starting focus is the best thing to do. Know what your core story is, know what the key relationship is, the theme of it, and then make sure everything you're building upon that is still supporting those key pillars. But yeah, I think I wouldn't quite, I'd have to think about that properly. If I was going to change for a feature version of this.
Well, if you, over the course of the conversation, if something strikes you, you could like, I want to revisit that question. Yeah. In my experience, that was like when I felt I had a good script was because I went through the process of just building something really huge, crunching it down to almost nothing, and then like stretching it back out again, and losing a lot of the fluff that was kind of unnecessary. And it seems like maybe you had to go through a more critical process of cutting stuff that was actually pretty good, but didn't fit in the.
It was all amazing. It was all like so good. It was really painful to lose every line, honestly. A travesty to culture. But what are you going to do?
So I should also mention that, just checking out the trailers for the shorts that you've made thus far in your career in film school, they're all like extremely impressive. And yeah, I wonder what your approach is to shorts, and if you could just share with me and anybody listening, kind of what you enjoy most about filmmaking when you graduate after this thesis, what you want to pursue, because you and I believe your friend Oscar have your own production company through which you have produced your shorts thus far. And I took a note just looking at your website that it looks like you have 4 projects in the works for 2021 already.
Yeah.
So just what are you up to like now, and what does the future, both very short term and kind of midterm, hold for you?
Yeah, for those projects right now, it's like I think all that stuff's post-production stuff. So that's because last year we were lucky to get to still make a lot of things. I think I directed 3 shorts last year and produced another. And so we were lucky to still get to make stuff during what was like a very strange year. And it was good to have that focus and something to look forward to and something to be doing and something to keeping you busy, something to be preparing for. And it was a kind of constant rotation, which is nice. We're used to being busy, and right now it's a bit weird because we don't have something new on the horizon. We're planning something really dumb, like we want to make this dumb shadow puppet musical video just to keep us busy. So we've got
doesn't
this,
sound dumb at all. That's right.
I mean, dumb in a really great way. Like, it's going to be glorious, but we feel like we need to have stuff all the time because we don't know what we're doing when we don't. We don't want to reflect upon reality at all. We want to keep moving. So we were lucky to have done a lot last year, and now we've still got a few of these edits right now. I'm editing one myself because it's in like half Scandinavian and a half English, and I'm half Norwegian. And so I'm able to understand both languages, and why I wrote it in both languages. But it's like, normally I'd like to have an editor, but like, I don't know anyone who can edit this film. So I'm editing it myself, which is actually been quite good because it keeps me busy. So we've got a few things in post-production, and the Millipede film just started being edited on Tuesday. So again, that would be good. I'll keep us busy for a bit looking at that. What was the question? I was talking about.
So I tend to ask like 10 questions at once. So
I think you asked like what do I like most about filmmaking?
Yeah. Because I said, you seem to wear many hats: writer, director, producer, and probably others that I didn't name. Are there ones that you enjoy most?
I mean, it's tricky because like writing for me is the safe zone. Like, it's just a happy place to sit and write, and you get to do whatever you want, say whatever you want. You just come up with ideas. It feels like a very pure form of filmmaking that I just get to enjoy. And even when there is deadlines to it, it still feels like I'm going to figure it out. And there's no pressure in the same way as like when you're directing, you're on set and shit's going down, and like there's always something happening, and you're always against the clock, and it's always like that. But like directing has those moments where you're like, it's just so good. It's the best job in the world. When I did the Scandinavian one I just mentioned, it was like a night shoot in this random town in England, and the crew was like 3 hours late to set, and it was like because they're all stuck in traffic. And I remember sitting there and walking up into the woods where we're going to do the shoot, and I was like, why do I do this? Like, why would anyone do this? It's the worst. Like, it's just so stressful, and you're under so much pressure, and like if it fails, like it's all your fault. And then, half an hour later, everything's set up. I'm rehearsing with the actors, and I'm like, oh no, this is the best thing in the world. This is all we should do is directing movies. And when you get to play, and I do a lot of stuff that involves comedy, that's like the best thing you can do in the world, is when you're like doing something that's funny and it's working, and you can start throwing in more ideas and gags, and that's like the best part of it, I think. And if you're lucky and you get to screen it to people and you get to be there when they watch it and they're enjoying it like that, as again, it's like the best. That is the best feeling, to hear people laughing in the right places. You're like, okay, like I've done good, and this is what I do it for. It's to entertain, and I'm entertaining people. That is like the goal of it.
And what if they laugh in the wrong places? I think I'm one of those people who like I laugh at the most like at the wrong joke, or
I don't know if I've really experienced that, fortunately. So
I'm gonna have to go watch one of your movies sometime.
Yeah, you can see if you just laugh at wrong places, and that maybe be useful to know. But or maybe I just sit there in denial and I think, oh, it's going really well, and it's going terribly, and I have no idea.
No, it would just be me. It would just be one voice out of like 100, like laughing at a random point.
There was a screening for a film I did that was like comedies, and like there was a guy in the audience I kind of knew, and before in the past I didn't really like him because he was a bit like a loudmouth and he seemed a bit obnoxious. But during the screening, he was laughing so much. I was like, I like this guy. I like the way I like this guy, the way he thinks, like the way he talks. He's my guy. He's
getting VIP to every screening.
Yeah. He has to come to everything. Every cut, he has to sit in the corner and laugh. Gives me confidence in the work.
I like that. It's kind of it's a nice message. Like, even if you don't love somebody walking down the street or bumping into them in the coffee shop, like if you're in the movies, you might appreciate similar things. There's some commonality, right?
Like I just need a fan. I need one fan. That's what I need.
Sounds like you found one. I also don't know if it was on your website or where, but I did get a little bit of a personal profile resume tidbit about you, that film school and pursuing film was not your first professional endeavor. And, this podcast is about indie creatives, and many of them are pursuing some creative endeavor while they're also holding up a full-time job and or considering rolling into trying to monetize what they do with their creativity. So yeah, I would love to hear more about your personal history in that regard.
Yeah, I think people who know me are sick of hearing about this, but I think I'll still tell my life story.
Friends and fans of Daniel, you could.
This is your chance to go
20 minutes.
Break. So. You've heard this before so many times, but basically, I have a master's in chemical engineering, which is like such a random thing to have to now be doing filmmaking. But it's because my background is that I grew up mainly in Aberdeenshire, in northeast of Scotland, which is the oil capital of the UK, and so like there's a real push for everyone to get into working in oil. And like I remember going to like a careers meeting, one of those council meetings, and I was the oldest in my family and I didn't really have anyone to like look up to as this is the journey you go on in life. I just kind of would walk along as it went, take as it came. And so you go into the meeting and I'm like, I don't really know what I want to do, but maybe advertising. And the career lady, she was just like, you didn't take art though, so you could never do advertising. And I was like, oh, okay, because I don't know how things work. So I was like, oh, okay, so what should I do? She's like, you got good grades, what about chemical engineering? And I was like, okay. so I applied for that, but I was like, always saw myself as someone who could do both the math side and the kind of English writing side. So I applied for chemical engineering and law, which is like a weird personal statement, right? But I did that. That was like my personal victory, I think. And then I got into both. And then I was like, oh, I like, what should I do? And I was like, well, with law, you have to like write essays. It sounds kind of not a lot. Whereas with engineering, I think I just have to like memorize equations. So I just chose engineering on that very like good decision making. Like kids, if you're listening at home, like this is not how you make choices. Okay, this is not what you do. But that was basically how I ended up going to study engineering. And then I hated it. Like I hated it so much, but I'm really stubborn and like I didn't want to be a quitter because it was hard. So I ended up doing it for 5 years and getting a master's in it just because I just didn't want to seem like a quitter, which again, terrible decision. And the whole time, like in my life, I was doing filmmaking as a hobby and making like the world's dumbest videos, stuff that like people should never, ever, ever see.
Did you
But
scrub
like,
them entirely from the internet, or?
no, I have a lot of stuff still, and I want to go back and figure out, who I really am as a filmmaker. I go back and watch these films, but yeah, they were like awful, but like the best fun making them. And that was kind of, but my parents and everyone was like, yeah, it's fine, you can do that, but like have a real job. Again, that's good advice. But yeah, I ended up doing that, and then I got a job working in renewable energy, and it was like a really good job. Like they looked after me really well, and they they didn't deserve the low effort that they got back out of me, as I was like exponentially skipping work to go do films. Actually, this is another thing. If the police are listening, if my former employees are listening, I didn't skip work. I never did that. I was a diligent employee. Yeah, don't listen to any of this. But
Just double
basically,
timing,
yeah, exactly.
moonlighting.
I was moonlighting. Anyway, but the thing was, I realized eventually, like maybe I should just, if I really want to do this, maybe I shouldn't be like skipping work to do this. I should just focus on doing this. And because I hadn't enjoyed education before, I figured, wouldn't it be nice to like enjoy education? So that's why going to film school, film life felt like be quite a cathartic thing to do. And fortunately, like because I had this like quite good job, I was able to like save up and afford to put myself through film school, which has been like just an amazing experience. It really has been what I hoped it would be, and actually enjoy what I was studying and actually doing the reading and actually excelling in class. That was something. I mean, I was the worst at chemical engineering. I was the bottom of the class. I was just, it felt terrible. But at least in this, I feel like I'm not the worst. So yeah, it's been a really kind of amazing experience, and I'm sad it's over. And now I have to get out the bubble and into the real world of filmmaking.
And what was there like one moment where you decided, all right, I got to pull the trigger because this is just like no, or was it a slow burn and slow boil?
Slow burn. It's like reality sinking in, and something about sitting in an office and literally feeling yourself getting older and feeling like time going away and losing time. And I think also it's like in terms of the environment that you work in, like I worked with lovely people, nice people, but big age difference and different sensibilities for comedy and silliness. And I'm a funny guy office, but like for what reason? Just because I happen to be younger and willing to be sillier than people who have to be more uptight because they're senior positions, is like those, like spending all day with people like that who you don't have that much in common with, and then you go for lunch and they talk about how they're doing up their bathrooms or their kids, and you're kind of like, I miss being with my dumb friends all day, and I could be with my dumb friends all day making movies maybe. So it's stuff like that that makes you think, am I missing out on life? Am I missing out on doing things the way I want to do them? And I kind of view life that way a lot of the time. I view it like looking back, like what will I think in 10 years time that I wish I was doing? What will I regret I wasn't doing? And yeah, it encourages to make a lot of bad choices sometimes, but also some good ones.
Nice. Yeah, it sounds like that. And based on what I see of your portfolio so far, that it was a good choice for you, and you seem very happy. So congratulations on pulling the trigger and going for it.
It took me like 20 something years to make a good choice in life, but
hey, if you only get one.
If you only get one, right? Yeah.
You didn't use it on like which cereal to buy at the store, so I think you're I think you used it in the right situation. And then also with that slow burn building up to like, all right, I'm going to do this. What was your film portfolio looking like? You said that you're kind of making a lot of silly videos and stuff, but how did you build up the confidence that you have the skill or the eye or the perspective, something that is, unique and makes you qualified to go to film school? And then when you were applying, what did you tender as your portfolio and or application?
Well, I think you can't have a portfolio much worse than mine. I think like people can definitely get much better than what I had. During that last year of work, I'd been making this sketch that turned into like an extended sketch that turned into a short that was about a blind detective. It was called Blind Detective, and it was like an action movie parody where like my friend, who is actually super funny, and I feel like he should have been an actor, but he decided to have a serious career, which I think also very sensible. But he's like,
as a chemical engineer,
as a geologist, yeah. But he's like the most naturally funny guy in the world, and he was playing this blind detective, kind of like a Will Ferrell-esque action hero, where he was like blind, but like it gave him this like gift where he could like see bad events, and it was like this huge over the top parody thing. I played the police chief, and like we had all these like huge over the top plots, but it's very funny, and like as sad as blindness is, it's really funny because it like everything you do is suddenly funny if the person is blind, and that's terrible to say. I shouldn't have that recorded, but like it just made it the easiest thing to like play with. Like put him in any scene and he's blind, and like suddenly it was funny for some reason because it was like the physical comedy was there. I'm so sorry, blind people. Like it's just a sad thing, but like it was very funny for us, and like we made this thing that was like originally like a 2-minute sketch, then it became like a 5-minute thing, and then it became like a 35-minute like thing.
and it was like episodes, or
no,
just
it was
building
like
on
it
the
became this
original
like
base.
one like, so it was like a terrible process, but like you should never do this, right? But you make things that were designed to seem like they weren't connected. So it was like a montage where he's like doing this, doing that, and they were like, no, now we have to connect it. We have to figure out how they go together. And basically we made this like thing, and we were like filming in my office out of hours because that was like the police. Oh my god, please hope no one's listening. But like, it was like the police chief's office was my office, and we were in like the London branch head's office because it was the fanciest, out of hours, sneaking in, doing stuff where there was like fake blood going everywhere, and then like having to take photos as we rearranged it. And like one time we were like, someone came to the office as we were filming something, and we were like awkwardly standing there, and like we were like, hey, what are you doing here? We're like, and we had like, the camera set up with a tripod, and we were like, we're taking LinkedIn photos. That was and people were like, but that was like, what was she doing there? Because she was this lady who came in with her boyfriend. I was kind of like, but what are you doing here? She's like, I forgot my purse. So like she was also like suspiciously in the office, like up to no good. And then after that, like rumors started going around that like I was maybe shooting porn in the office out of hours. And I just was like, I think that's better, right? I was like, I didn't know what was better or worse, like shooting this action hero parody or porn. So either way, I was like, everyone asked me, I was like, maybe, like, I don't know. Eventually the questions went away.
Why don't you take a gander online? Maybe you could find my work.
Maybe. But yeah, then eventually like we screened this film to like our group of friends. And like our friend had like this really fancy apartment block where she had a cinema in her building, and like we rented that out. It was like 35 people could go or something, and we made like a huge black tie event. We pretended we were sponsored by Heinz beans, so we had like Heinz stickers everywhere, and everything was sponsored by Heinz. We did this like,
for the record, not actually sponsored by Heinz.
No, we wish, and when we reached out, but they weren't interested.
They got a lot of free publicity.
Yeah, the beans purchases were all out of the roof in our group right then. It was like very exciting to have beans. But yeah, we had this like big screening night. We had the you wouldn't have heard of him, but in the X Factor in the UK in like 2010, there was a contestant called Wagner, who was this like nutter. He was like this Brazilian guy, huge hair. He would come on and do like samba routines, versions of songs. He couldn't pronounce anyone's names. He was kind of iconic. But at that point, this is like 2016, he was like, you could pay him 20 quid and he would say anything you wanted. So I paid him 20 quid to like do this like greeting. And it was like, hey guys, congratulations on the premiere. I really wish I could be there. To my friends, Daniel and the stars, like honestly, so proud of you guys. And he sang like a song about the blind detective I wrote for him. And I played it before the screening. Like it was, yeah, so it was this like crazy evening. And I was kind of sitting there in the room, and like people were laughing a lot, mainly because like we got them hooked on Heinz champagne before. But like it was like, this is great. Like I want to do this all the time. I want to screen stuff and make people laugh. And that was one of those moments that made me think like, okay, like maybe, you just try at least,
Yeah. And
so,
like
yeah,
this was all, you were planning this huge event all the while you were working as a chemical engineer.
Yeah. Well, I was a technology analyst at this point in renewable energy, a very, very good one. But yeah, that was what was happening in that year. And so one of the things I submitted to film school was that film, and like a music video or something I'd done for a friend. So it was like looked like terrible quality, like DSLR, terrible sound, but I still felt like, okay, this is kind of represents me a little bit. So here you go. And yeah, so you like, if you're worried about your portfolio, don't.
Just have one, I guess.
Yeah, anything will do. If that will
did
do,
they
then
give you
anything will do.
feedback like, a little distasteful on?
I feel like in the interview, the guy, yeah, the guy was blind, and it was kind of awkward in the interview. No, he wasn't blind. Actually, you know, the one thing I would say that for that premiere event, we raised money for Blind Children UK. We did
you?
a bucket round, yeah, and we raised over £100. So,
Oh, that's awesome.
I don't know if that counts for much, but it counts for something. So let me be clear, please, blind people, I really am on your side. I just, yeah.
Yeah,
what was I saying? Oh God, I'm going to get arrested. I'm going to get sued by my former employers. I'm going to get hounded by the blind people. I shouldn't have signed a release form. I should have said, we can't do this show.
I'm glad that you sent it to me before we started recording. No, anything could be taken out that you think was, could misrepresent your true feelings. But yeah, and I'm also curious, you said that you have a Norwegian background and Norwegian Scottish background. Over the holidays, and this is like slightly embarrassing to admit, I watched this very like what I could only describe as a Norwegian Sex in the City show set around Christmas.
Wow, what is it called?
Home. I want to say it's called Home for Christmas. It's a Netflix show, and it has 2 seasons.
Oh yeah, my sister told me about this. I didn't watch it. My sister said it was really funny though.
I absolutely loved it, and it made me wonder. And coming into this, I saw that in one of your profiles, it mentioned that you were Scottish Norwegian. And yeah, what is the state of the Norwegian film industry? Like, I know I've spoken to a couple of other British folks who are making films. And of course, in the US, we have big markets in Hollywood and New York and Atlanta and a couple of other areas. But I wonder around Europe, how local scenes are adjusting to new technology, new forms of distribution, and what historically the film culture was like.
So what's good about Norway right now is that like they are good at investing in films and low budget films and shorts. I've had 2 shorts funded by like a local production scheme in Norway. And you go for a process, like you give them a script and you pitch to them and you budget it and stuff, but they're like super encouraging, really helpful. They basically give you, what I've got through them actually is the same thing as like what you'd get from a term at film school. If you got picked to direct at our school, you get it's the same money you get equipment too, but you're not paying for film school. So they're actually like giving quite amazing support on like, this is like a local level. And they provide feedback on your script and preparation, and then on post as well. And they put me onto some like online courses too. So like they're doing like, at least from my experience, doing a really good job at helping develop new talent in the country. So it's definitely, and they're investing in their culture, and they're investing in filmmaking in Norway. And like Norway is a very unique country in many ways. Like financially, it's so different. They have problems different to ours. Like every other country in the world is worrying how to get more money. Norway's wondering how do we spend all our money. Big debates around like what do we do to make sure we're just investing in the right way for our future. That's the luxury they have. They have big debates about wolves. Like that's the kind of things they do over there. Like when we're dealing with like Brexit over here and the country's in turmoil, Norway feel just as dramatically about introducing wolves to the wild. That's what they're dealing with. But yeah, definitely like they're investing a lot. And growing a scene, and you see like directors from Norway are getting out there. Like the guy did like the Intimidation game, he's Norwegian, and then you find stuff like he was Norwegian. That's so cool. And like so like the people are coming out of there, and I think that's will be, of course, because they're investing in people, encouraging people, and like that's what you can do to really grow your local scene. Like Norway is a tiny country. It's like 4.5 million people, but for that, like actually a lot of people do come out of there that can influence the world, and it's always quite impressive.
Yeah. Are there any other recommendations that you would have out of Norway from a more contemporary sense?
What have I watched recently?
And not to put you on the spot if you don't, that's
No, I mean, there was this program called Scum, Skam, which was like kind of like Skins, but it was like a Norwegian version of it. And that is really quite a cool, intimate show that follows a few characters, did a few seasons, and then that went all around the world, that show. That was like popular everywhere. And like I think different countries had different versions of it. So they have stuff like that. They have like cheesier stuff, like there's like these comedy Viking shows that are kind of amazing because they shoot them in English and Norwegian. And then
I feel like is one of those on Netflix?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's on Netflix.
Yeah.
And they all talk in a Norwegian
I wasn't
accent.
quite in the mood for it, and I put it on because I saw Vikings, and I was like, "This might be cool." And it was like very like over the top, ridiculous slapstick.
Yeah,
and I was like, didn't expect this.
that is kind of. I don't want to say it's the epitome of Norwegian comedy, but there's a lot of stuff like that. I think it does suit certain sensibilities. But they also have a very dry sense of humor in Norway. They picked up because they love like British TV, and they also love American TV. So they picked up sarcasm from there, and they picked up those sensibilities of like dry humor very much. So like they'll love the British Office and the American Office in different ways. So they're like English speaking culture is very influential in Scandinavia. Like they watch it, and they watch it without subtitles. So with subtitles, they don't dub it. Like other new European countries will dub these things, and in Norway they have it with subtitles from the start, so they're always taking in English, and that's also why they speak such good English over there. But they have like there is different voices and different things coming out of Norway, like quite a range of stuff. There was like a really, I always thought it was a good show, but every time I've told someone to watch it, they always thought it was terrible. But it was a show called Lilyhammer, and it's about one of the guys from Sopranos, basically a mobster, but he wasn't a Sopranos, one of like the lower bit players in that. But he moves to like this small mountain town in a Norwegian, like Norway, and basically becomes like a gangster in that town. It was called Lilyhammer. And I thought that show was great, but every time I watch it, and I like didn't really like it. It was weird. Also, there's a show called like what's it called? It's basically about like Vikings, like the Norse gods. It was on Netflix, and it's like teenagers get the powers of gods.
And it's a Norwegian production?
Ragnarok. Have you heard of that?
Oh, I've heard of it, but I haven't watched it.
But anyways, it's like Netflix are buying a lot of this Norwegian stuff for some reason, but I don't know why.
Yeah. Even that Home for Christmas or whatever it was called was like very interesting to see. I mean, I've never been to Norway, and I've never really interacted with Norwegian culture at all. So to see some areas where there's similarities and differences in the way that we interact, and like that aspect of it was fascinating. Like, what are lives like in Norway? And how, what are some, because the show takes place during Christmas, you get a sense for different Christmas culture in Norway that may differ or be similar to the US and or England. So yeah, it was cool, and I'm looking forward to like exploring a little bit more of Netflix's international portfolio.
Really extensive Norwegian catalog, for some
specifically
reason.
Norwegian portfolio. So then you grew up in Scotland, though?
I did like 5 years in Norway as a kid, so I do speak Norwegian from that time, but mainly I was in Scotland. My whole secondary school in Scotland and university in Scotland. But we would go to Norway every summer because we had family there, and I still have friends there. So it's definitely a part of me, and like I've used that in writing. I've written about Norway and a bit about that. But like I am more British if I was going to put it between the two, although each side has normally pinned me as the other. Like in Norway, I'm Scottish, and Scotland, I'm Norwegian. But yeah.
And what's the film scene like in Scotland? And do you think that you'll go back there, or is just the industry so developed in metropolitan London areas that
I mean,
you'll...
Scotland is like getting investment, and a lot of that because they go and shoot lots of exterior stuff in Scotland. For example, all these kind of medieval Viking shows are being shot in Scotland because it's really beautiful, and it's a lot more accessible than, say, going to like the mountains of Norway or let's say the mountains of Iceland. So it's more likely you're going to go shoot stuff in Scotland. So there's a lot of like very cold work out in the countryside you can do in Scotland right now. That looks amazing because it is a beautiful country up there. Yeah, I think I'll probably be staying in London for now, but like there is a benefit obviously to going to Norway or Scotland, being like in a smaller pond and hedging your bets that way. And like no one should want to live in London forever. Like, you know, you want to be here for a while and then get out to somewhere with a little better air quality. But yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, do you think that you'll, you know, are you interested in getting in on other productions? And if so, what role are you most interested in playing? And how does your future look in terms of entering as a professional into this arena and competing for work on larger productions, and then also trying to make your own?
I think I like at this moment in time, it's kind of like, you know, you take what you get rather than you get to kind of dictate what you'd like to do. Like for me right now, I want to keep writing, and I want to keep trying to like. For me, I'd love to get into like a writer's room or something like that. I think I'd really enjoyed that experience. At the same time, like we're trying to grow our little production company, and that's a case of like trying to get more business that way, doing stuff for companies and little adverts and stuff is kind of what we're hoping to do. But like you can't really control it, and I think you need to be ready to be flexible and improvise and take opportunities that come when they come, especially with the way the world is right now. Like who knows what's going to happen in a month's time or a week's time. Like things could change completely. But yeah, I think we're ready to just kind of like take any opportunities that come our way and keep hustling. I think that's all you can really do.
Yeah. And do you find the like more corporate working for clients and filming for companies, maybe say, do you find that fulfilling, you know, relative to making your own stuff and writing? And I wonder what the balance of that is like for you.
It's obviously different, but like I think it's still up to you to make it good and enjoy it and find a way to enjoy it. Like people obviously like there's an edge to like, oh, corporate work, and yeah, okay, but like you need to earn money, so you need to do videos like this, and you can still make them good, and you have fun with it, and do projects that you think are interesting in a way. Like, okay, it's not making a feature film, but like it's still important to do it, and you can still hopefully do something in it that you find interesting, like try and use a new technique or try a new camera or something that you can try and do to like make it help develop you as well. So I don't really mind it so much. Like I think it's just part of the game, and like it's about you trying to make the most of it.
Yeah, and like you could still apply your creativity and
yeah,
you know,
and style. I mean, most hopefully you can in some way add some style to it that you think represents you.
Yeah. Is there anything in your shooting and or directing that you define as stylistically yours?
No, I wouldn't go so far as to say that. I wouldn't be caught on camera with that kind of statement.
How about something you aspire to make your style, something like that? I mean, do you want to be known, or do you it could even go with what you like, because I think oftentimes a lot of people want to shoot what they like and what, you know, drew them into film most themselves. So is there anything in that
I think
regard?
like thinking about like my sort of influences in a way, like I grew up loving The Simpsons. Like I absolutely love The Simpsons, and the thing about The Simpsons is it has that wonderful thing where it's like it can be really wacky and really crazy and really funny, and then suddenly it breaks your heart. Like it absolutely breaks your heart, and we all can think of straight away a Simpsons scene that broke your heart, and you can think about it so clearly. And like that's what I think I've been trying to do with films, and like it's such a hard balance to get, but it's that balance between like humor and fun, and then something that feels really real and honest and is emotive. And that's what I'm always trying to do, is like, you know, lure in an unsuspecting audience with like something really funny and like wacky and like these characters in the situation, and then something happens and you're like, oh, like that's horrible and that's so sad, and I really feel for those characters, and that reminds me of something that I felt in real life, and that's maybe a little bit cathartic for me to like go through again. So I think that's what I'm trying to do with the narratives that I'm making. And that's to make success, because that's like the hardest thing I think to do, is like balance along that tightrope of tone where it's funny but it's real. It's not like slapstick humor, it's not over the top, it's not nothing matters. And because I think there's something about when people laugh, like you make them really like the characters more, like there's something that makes them feel at ease, and that I think gives you the opportunity to then, you know, twist the knife more later. So that's the thing I've been trying to do. It's just obviously really hard to get that balance perfect all the time.
Have you found any advice or tools in your own toolbox for when you're navigating that balancing act to help you, you know, make it to the end?
I think it's an instinct. It's just an instinct. You got to feel it on the day. I think when I direct, I'll try and get a little bit of variation in performance, so that in the edit I can control it later and see like, okay,
so doing like 2 takes or
yeah, get a few takes, get a few versions, and once you have a version that you think is good at the start, you think, okay, now we've got that one, let's do it differently. Just because like on the day it can be really different than in an editing room. It can be completely different tone that you're trying to reach with that scene. So like that's definitely like, I mean, there's obvious advice, but like getting variation in performance, it's just gonna like save your life so often. And it's not unusual to be like looking at your takes and edit being like, oh, the one I didn't think I liked is the one I like, because there's something about it now that works so much better than it did before. And that is going to help you be able to try and find that tonal balance. Like if you were to speak about this in really like layman's terms, like, okay, you've got a version where someone's crying hysterically and one where they sob, you know, and like having both with you is going to give you options in the edit to really hopefully get there.
Right, which you might need, because depending on the lead in scene and the following scene, the context of the whole may really change that snapshot of that one scene, right?
Or also just like how dramatic do you think the performances should be in that moment? Because sometimes you need to show more and sometimes you need to show less. And if you have those options with you already, it's easier to do in the edit. Be like, okay, let's do the more reserved one, you know, and then you have it. And then I can be like, okay, this is, because if you're balancing tone, if you go from comedy to drama, sometimes that jump shouldn't be that dramatic because it would be so harsh. So sometimes it's nice to have steps along the way that help you find your way to that where you want to be, and then you can go back up again. But like, yeah, that's what I found, is even like having options in the edit. I think sometimes you do see directors like will go like for like loads of takes of the same thing, and you're like, well, okay, maybe the camera movement was a bit off and you wanted to get that perfect, but like you're missing out on other things you can be getting as well. Maybe this is terrible advice. I don't know.
No, you mean, so you're saying sometimes they do the same take over and over again, but they're not having the actor change their...
Yeah, they're not getting like not getting enough variety out of the take, which means you're kind of wasting time, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I think that's good advice. I mean, it might not apply to everyone, but it's certainly something to be aware of. It's always good to be aware of the different
definitely
options.
With comedy, you want options because jokes land differently all the time. So you just want to have options in performance.
And are you, so you really enjoy the writing side of things? Are you constantly writing? Do you have like a couple of scripts on your shelf or in the works at any given time? And like, what's your workflow in terms of generating material?
But it's interesting because like I don't know. I do always have something I'm writing. I couldn't always say where they come from or like where the generation comes from. But there's always something I'm writing, and at the same time as writing, as doing something else. Because I just think, one, like they do bleed into each other a little bit and they help inspire each other sometimes accidentally. But also it is just nice to be able to like keep thinking, but think about something else. So maybe it's like, okay, in the run up to a shoot, I can only work on one thing at once. But in general, it's nice to work on a couple of scripts at the same time. And I do tend to have enough ideas in my head that I can jump into the next idea and be like, okay, now it's time to work on this one, and let's outline that idea. And then I can start writing that while I'm doing that. But that's where I think it's been lucky to be doing like film school with projects outside of film school at the same time, because it means I always have something to be working on, and like the productions will overlap. And that can be hectic to be on like post-production one thing, pre-production another, and having to make choices about like which meeting am I going to go to today, because I can't really go to both. But like something about being in the rhythm of it and like rolling on to the next one seems to be good for me. I don't know.
Yeah, it's better than kind of falling into a flat period where you don't have anything to
and then you feel really
motivate
lost.
you.
And reality sinks in. You're like, I'm a failure. I don't know.
Well, in that case, I mean, then you could just start working on, continuing to the shadow puppets, or continuing to flesh out another idea or another script.
Exactly. So, I mean, go back to another draft, and you should be doing that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But like, I do enjoy writing. I do, and like, I think a lot of people I know are scared of it because they find it really hard. And I think a lot of that is because like you put something on page and it feels very final and like representative of what the project is. Whereas I've been very accepting all the time of writing bad stuff, like writing it, it's okay for it to be bad, and then I'll come back to it and I'll fix it. I know I'm going to fix it, and it's going to be easier to fix it now I've written it once. And that's a lot more freeing, because then you don't really get writer's block. I mean, you do sometimes, maybe spend an hour trying to figure out what the scene is, but like you're not going to be held up for months because you just get something down and it's rubbish. It doesn't matter, because one day I'm going to fix it, and maybe what I write next will help infer what that thing should be. So I don't get the same fear or like self-loathing that I think other people get from writing.
Yeah, I've been, to be fully transparent, I think I've been feeling that self-loathing a little bit lately. And like, there was a period where I was generating a lot of like relatively good writing, and I was happy with the level of creativity and the ideas and how they were coming together. And when I was writing, I was able to tap into some sort of flow and stream of consciousness. And lately it's just been like, oh, I could barely hit one key on the keyboard. And so you've already given great advice, which I've been trying to do myself, which is just basically just keep hitting the keys, even if they're not forming real words. Like you're moving something along and there's a couple of ideas in that paragraph that really doesn't make sense. Maybe you could pull a sentence out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
But is there any other advice that, for you, like tips and tricks that you use to get yourself into some sort of a flow state and generating ideas and fleshing them out?
You don't want to write too soon. Like you want to have fleshed out enough of it in bullet points and whatever, and to the point where you really are ready to start writing, because once you have to stop writing, to start thinking about what happens next and where is the scene and what's the character's name, that's going to interrupt your flow for sure. And you can't just knock out a scene because you are still planning it. And that probably is also a problem. Maybe sometimes that happens to me too. A lot of times, like, well, I'm stuck is because I haven't actually planned the scene out yet. And then it's like, I'm like, oh, what am I meant to be writing? And like, well, you haven't decided yet. You have to decide that first. So I think like the deeper your outline is for your story, the easier it is going to be to put into script form, because you've already decided all the things. And when you're in outline form, maybe that also feels like less pressure to get it right and to set it in stone. And it still feels more like loose and experimental.
Right. And less flowery language and more, more to the point.
Yeah. But I think the key thing is like, let yourself be bad. Like let yourself write terrible lines of dialogue, cliche endings to scenes. Like let yourself do it, because it's like the best way you're going to get out of it later. Once it's down, you can be like, okay, that was the worst version of this scene I'm ever going to write. And now I'm going to make something really good.
Did you have any other ideas besides the Fantastical Millipede or Centipede? Sorry,
Well,
did it?
well,
Millipede.
my backup was the Norwegian one, the one called Swan Song. It's about two Norwegians who are like on a work trip to Wales, and they run over a swan, and in Wales that's treason, and they get stopped by policewomen, and it's like basically they have to decide they're going to stick together or they're going to split up to like pin it on the other. And that was my backup graduation film idea. And then I was in lockdown, and I was like, maybe I'll just pitch this one to the Norway people, and then they ended up funding it. So then I ended up doing my backup grad before my grad, and then doing Millipede before Christmas. But that was the backup script idea I had.
Nice. And where do you, going back to creative generation process side stuff, like where do you come up with your ideas? What do you use for inspiration?
I don't think there isn't, but there isn't just one thing, is there? It's like there's no
Right.
surefire to have an idea. They all come in like random ways. A few of my films I have like found as like one line notes in my on my phone, written like drunk, and like I have to reinterpret what
Is
I
that a
meant at the time.
prerequisite?
I really don't want to say that it is, but it was definitely like that's part of what makes it hard to unscramble, because it'll be like a line that just says like, okay, for the swan, I was like, it's swan, but it's goose. And that's how like what's the film is, right? So like, and I was like, what does this mean? And I was like, oh, like this is about that. And then like, okay, then that. So then I don't quite know what the idea was, or like how it happened, but maybe it was something someone said, or like I think a lot of ideas come when you're just like something to do with like listening to music and being in a situation, and then you kind of are in the scene of the film. You're in like one of the scenes of the film. You're experiencing it. And you're like, oh, this could be part of a film. This
Uh-huh.
moment could be sitting in a film. That's the starting block of it.
And taking a note to describe that one
Write
specific
down the
scene in a
note.
movie that you don't know what it's about is hard enough when you're sober.
Not all my ideas come this way. Oh God, I really shouldn't be interviewed. Not all my ideas come this way. A lot of them come like in completely normal scenarios. Um, one idea I had, it was like I was thinking about like, okay, what locations do you have access to? Because like my family had a cottage. All like Scandinavians have like cottages in the woods somehow. Like either their family has it or their friend has it. You always have some way to go into the woods, and like it's like your right in Norway as a Norwegian is to spend time in nature. That's a genuine like right you have as a Norwegian. And so we have this family cottage in the mountains, and it's like my great grandfather built it. This was really small, basic cottage. It just got electricity, it just got running water. I had this place, I had access to this place, and I was like, okay, like what film could I do at this cottage? And I was thinking about how that we've had so many guests from around the world at that cottage who are experiencing like Norwegian life for the first time, and you realize that like, oh, they don't know how to do anything we know how to do. Like we were out rowing, like fishing, and we're in a rowboat, and my brother-in-law was like rowing, and he was like terrible at it, and he was like, it's so hard, and I was like, I hadn't been there for a while, so I was like, oh, maybe it is really hard. So like I took the oars and I was like just rowing, and I was like, no, like they just don't know how to do this.
Are they
And I was
special, like patented Norwegian oars?
no, they were just oars. So I was like, this is so weird. Like, why is it so hard for you? And I was like, well, it's because like he didn't grow up doing things Norwegians do. Like we all are rowing and kayaking and fishing and skiing and snowboarding, and that's just part of your curriculum as a Norwegian. But in Britain, like you don't do anything. Like Britain is like the worst climate in the world. It's never cold enough to do anything. It's never warm enough to do anything. So they just have to just like go to the pub. That's all they have to do. So I was like, the script, well, okay, maybe it's like, okay, two Brits go to Norway on a survival weekend, and they have to do all these things, and they'll be terrible at it, and that'll be the film. It'll be really funny. And that ends up being a film I made, and we went up like 7 of us to stay in this cottage that houses 4 people for a week. And we lived there, and we like kind of lived the story of like the characters, had like a crazy experience, and we made this film. And that's how that idea came. That was like kind of location, and then kind of building off the location. But yeah, I think a lot of ideas come like just something to do with music, and something to do with like experiencing something and hearing someone say something, and like that is the kernel that you build the rest of the film about. So all
Right.
building to that moment, or all starts from that moment, I think.
Yeah, and there's definitely a cliche of like being open to the universe and to ideas coming, but I've been thinking about it in terms of just like being relaxed and being in the moment and not worrying about this and that is when I'm most receptive to ideas. Like I like to take really hot baths.
Okay.
Little fun tidbit about
Is
me.
that in general or just to do with this?
No, in general, I like love to take hot baths, but I found that I like start getting really cool, wonky, creative ideas that are like, sometimes just that scene in the woods that
Yeah.
sparks is could potentially spark a whole film script. Yeah, I don't know. I lived in Japan for a while, and they have like onsen there and the spas
Yeah.
and stuff. So I think after I went to a couple of onsen in Japan, I was just like, I'm going to be taking really hot baths for the rest of my life.
That's good. That's what you took home. That's good.
That's yeah. Nothing else of the culture other than I like that they take baths. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty cool. It's very clean, you know?
And yeah, also I have a friend who, as he's falling asleep, he starts to like stream of consciousness speak in a dreamlike state as he's falling asleep. So he'll just be like, oh, the puppies are so cute and they're like flying. And like, but I realize too, when I am just like relaxing and not quite napping or sleeping, but just like kind of meditating and letting myself go, like I'll have really nice ideas and like I'll say novel ideas that I've had idea generation that way. So maybe something to do with relaxation and I mean being out in a pub with your friends and them saying something and you being in that total moment.
Yeah. But I think that makes sense what you're saying about like opening your mind up, because letting yourself think is going to let you come up with ideas. Obviously, like we spend so much time like on our phones and watching things, and we're constantly consuming information. We don't give ourselves as much time these days just to sit and think. Like if you think when you're commuting, like you're listening to music or you're on Twitter, whereas maybe in the past that was a chance to like sit and ponder and think about things, and that's where ideas are allowed to happen. So it makes loads of sense that if you sit and you focus on having the bath and that moment, that you're going to like open your brain up to opportunity.
But I guess I would differentiate too, like, or get into the granular nature of thinking about thinking, because so much of, and I don't think it's exclusive to me, so much of my thinking nowadays is consumed with like the worrying side with, given this state of the world. And like you said, if you're worried about reality sinking in, maybe if you don't have a next project to really stumble into. And so I've been trying to, and it's, I guess it goes without saying that meditation and things like that, so many people are interested in those things for that reason. But yeah, I've been trying to loosen my mind and steer it away from the worrying and all of the problems that we have in the world, and allow kind of, or I don't even know what to call it, but just like ideas to come to me rather than thinking of ideas.
Sure. Which is always going to be much better than when you try and force an idea.
It.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, do you have any questions?
How much of your own life do you put into your scripts? How much do you sort of take from who you really are?
That's a good question. So I shared with you the trailer for a hero film, and I wrote it, I directed it, I acted in it, I produced it. I did way too much of things that I knew nothing about. And that script, I kind of knew it at the time, but especially looking back on it, I was graduating college and transitioning into, looking for work, and that stage of my life in my early 20s. And that movie is very much about the uncertainty of a man coming into the world when things are very uncertain for him in terms of what he wants to do with his future. And things around him are changing and evolving when he kind of expected them to be stable, and they're a little bit destabilized. So in that one, quite a bit. In more recent stuff, I think I'm more exploring kind of that guy that you described watching your movie and laughing out loud, that you really didn't care for him before that. But once you heard him laughing, you realized there was commonality. And in what I'm writing lately, I'm trying to explore finding commonality with people who I think I have nothing in common with.
Okay.
Like everybody else, I'm really troubled by the state of the world, and specifically the state of my country and the divisions that exist in every sense of the word, but just how divisive any issue is and any issue becomes. And when I was in college, I studied peace studies and conflict resolution as a like subset of political science. And so I always have a mind of understanding that maybe you could find a path forward for compromise, or maybe you don't even need to compromise. Maybe your interests are not mutually exclusive with people who you like just hate, but maybe you could actually coexist and both get what you want. Anyway, so that's what I'm exploring more recently, is trying to understand people who I don't understand, and like you said, kind of humanize a villain. Try to understand. Maybe you don't agree with them, but you could still seek to understand them.
For sure, yeah. And this is a script. It's going to become a script, or what is it? It's just kind of.
I have a script written, and now I'm just trying to develop the villain character, who's the villain of a bigger story.
Okay.
And see, put some stuff out on YouTube and see how people react to it, and if it's feasible to build an audience. I'm like a Japanophile to some degree, and I really like old school practical effects.
Yeah.
Which I should say, I was super impressed that you guys went with building the upside down set, which is pretty cool. And let's add that to the list of questions once I finish my little spiel here.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I want to build some scalable cities and a giant robot to smash them.
That's so fun.
In short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, thank you. So please do tell me about any advice you have for doing such practical effects.
Advice, I have practical effects. I mean, it's always going to be a lot of fun. It is fun. It's a fun day on set doing the practical effects stuff. But definitely practice beforehand, pre-shoot it, try it out. Don't be there figuring it out on the day if you can, because unless you're lucky, it might not be perfect. For us, we built we built the character's bedroom, and we shot there for a day. And then while we were shooting something else, the production design team flipped the bedroom. They basically unscrewed everything from the walls, screwed them back in upside down, the posters upside down. They took out the floor piece, put in a ceiling piece. And then we came in and shot all the upside down stuff. And so we have our character, she's wearing this costume. It's like a prototype early costume. So it's like got a hoodie base to it. She's crawling in, she's doing this cool bit, and we were having a great time. She's going in, turning on a light, going on, and jumping onto her bed, whatever. It's like 5 takes of it. And then we realized that her toggles were loose. So they were like on the upside down, shooting straight up into the air for like no reason. So they might have to do a few more takes of that to get it right. But yeah, it's a case of like doing it a lot of times and being really careful with your monitor and seeing what's happening, because one little mistake can ruin your whole practical effect.
Yeah. And how did you manage because when she's on the ceiling and you've shot in a flipped upside down set, then theoretically the hood and the drawstring should be hanging in her face. And
exactly.
How did you mitigate or
so the drawstrings we just tucked in. And the hood was on her head, and it's quite a small hood, so it was kind of compact. So
okay.
Kind of got away with it a little bit with that. But there's a scene where she's in there and she's like, she's not wearing a hood, she's not wearing a costume. She's got her hair tied up in a bun, and we had the hair tied up to like a bit of fishing wire. So someone offset was holding up the hair. So it's like loose, but looks about right. And there's one moment where she's like holding her superhero goggles and she drops them. But when she drops them, they should go up. So we also had them on wire. So when she was holding onto them, let go, they were yanked out of frame. So they looked like they were going down. So those are fun things that we kind of figured out how to do. And I think like practical effects are fun for the whole crew because everyone gets to look like it's a team effort between like the camera team, production design team, makeup team. Everyone's really excited to pull it off. When it works on the monitor, everyone feels really good. So like definitely it's fun to do practical stuff. And like the day you shoot that building scene with the monster coming through, just like everyone's favorite day on set.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. I'm still building the robot, which has been time consuming, but should be rewarding when it's done.
That's cool. We did a shoot summer 2019 where we were doing we built like airplane set, and part of the film had like a plane crash going on. And for that, like we don't like in real life they have their whole airplane on like a gimbal thing and they like will shake the whole thing. We obviously didn't have that. We had like 2 pieces of wall and 4 rows of seats. What we did was we just like basically we had like this huge like fan that we were like shooting smoke through and like throwing like light bits of like serviettes and cups and stuff. And then we had like the camera just doing like this, and it shot in slow motion, and it really worked. And it was really fun on set that day. We called it the Chaos Day because we were just going to be throwing stuff everywhere, and everyone's going to be going nuts from this big blower. And it was a really, really fun day. And like, it was just really fun. One to plan it, practice it, and then shoot it. Like it's just, it's fun. Like you got to have some of that in a shoot to make it like worth doing. Otherwise, you don't do the short. There's got to be some sort of stunt.
Yeah. And I mean, I saw, I guess, the trailer for that film, and it was, considering the constraints that you just described, was really impressively done. Like it looked really good. And I was like, wow, he's a student filmmaker and he's like in an airplane essentially. How do you get that level of like set and production, and is it wrapped into just the assets that the university has on hand, or their relationships, or something that you guys have to manage?
Their relationship. So like the production design head department at the school, he's quite active in the industry, and he had shot at this place called Shoot Aviation, which is like just outside London. It's like a big hangar, and they shoot loads of serious stuff, that big budget stuff. And because he had done a shoot there and he'd become good friends with the owner was willing to help us out because we knew him. So that was like dropping that name at the right time, and he was going, okay, I'll help you out. We got basically for like basically nothing. We got we got to take plane parts. I think they gave us like 3 or 4 bits of wall. Like we basically, you learn weird things doing filmmaking. Like you learn how a plane fits together. So now like we know that like it's like these wall. It's kind of like they called it like an IKEA build, but that was really underplaying it. But basically, it's like there's wall pieces, and then like a locker piece, and then connector pieces, and then like the seats are on rails. And they gave us like rails, 5, maybe like 8 seats, and then walls, and then we used like studio flats to build the back piece. And it was like a crazy build because you basically had to figure out how to do this. They have all this like scaffolding, they do it on their place, that we were just building out of wood. So that was kind of crazy. But basically the idea was that we build one wall, and then every time we were shooting the other side of the coverage, we turn the seats around, because the good thing about planes is that the walls look exactly the same.
Right.
We could pretend the same wall was the other wall. This meant like a bit of pain in production, so I had to unscrew the seats, flip them, and the seats were horrible to flip. But then we also got to shoot like a day location on one of their real planes. And then we could basically shoot our wide shots on location and then go into the studio and shoot all the close-ups. So that's how we got away with that. But
And were
yeah,
you just lucky? Like, I mean, did you develop the script and the fact that you were going to do something in a plane after you realized that you would have those
no,
assets
I
available
was
to you? Or,
lucky. I
yeah.
was lucky in the sense that like, well, the way it works at the school is like every semester you pitch for the next semester to direct. So you pitch your script and your idea. And I had the idea, and this was like a note on my phone that said, jumps out plane but doesn't. And then I realized it was like about someone who is faking their death to escape their reality, like to make a fresh start. But to like have an alibi, the person next to them, they're going to tell the person next to them like they're depressed and like they have to leave their life and they can't do this anymore. And the person next to them is going to realize from this fake story that they're depressed and they need to change their life, and they're going to have this profound moment of life by mistake in a way. And that was like at least in the original script, that was a setup. And she was going to jump out this plane. And I went to the production design guy and I was like, look, I've got this script. Would it be possible to build a plane in the studio? And he's like, Daniel, you're just in luck. I've just done this. I've just built a plane. I know exactly what you do and we'll figure it out. So go pitch and win and then we'll talk about it. And then like, fortunately I got picked to direct this film. And then I went to him and I was like, Matt, like we're building the plane. So yeah.
That's awesome. Now, is there any place, or, you know, what do you do with these shorts after you make them? Because you've made a handful, I guess, that you are more satisfied with than the ones you made before you got into the program, I guess.
Yeah.
Is there any place to watch anything besides I know the trailers are on your website, but
Yeah,
to watch the full thing?
they go on where you hope they go on a festival circuit, and so you've got to hide them for 2 years or something like that. I don't really understand too much about it. I don't know, like the films I make aren't like maybe the films they want at the big festivals. You know, that they're a lot more commercial feeling, and there's a lot of dialogue, and there's a lot of like framing and shots that look like something. I'm trying to make something that looks like it could be shown in the movies or cinema, whereas I think it's not art house and it's not like arty. It's not, you know, I like close-ups, not wide shots, and you know that's not really the trend in terms of what is interesting right now. So, so for me, festivals is like just I've been going for like smaller things and just seeing like some success. It's not like I've had loads of success, but it's just kind of part of it, I guess, is what you want to do. But the strange festivals, like I always get this bad feeling that they're a scam, and I don't know why. I think it's being asked to pay loads of money for entrance that puts me off. And maybe,
yeah.
But they obviously are important and people do really well and people are making really cool stuff that goes to these things and screens these things. But I always feel like I don't know if that's my market. So yeah.
Have you at all determined alternative to doing the film festival circuit?
I think it's probably better for me to like put them online and just like promote them that way. Probably makes more sense. Just try and find the more general audience than would maybe want to go to a film festival. I really want to. It seems like I think films going to film festivals aren't good. I think they're amazing. Like we've had films from our school that go there and they're like doing really well and they're like beautiful pieces of work. But I don't make films like that. Like I don't make arty stuff. I don't make stuff that's like, you know, the classic 4:3 black and white European subtitle stuff that I think is more suited. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, just saying that film festivals aren't for you doesn't mean that you think that film festivals aren't great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's, you know, there's so much more content available these days. And when you have something that's such a high production value, even while you're still in school, I imagine that it's difficult to position yourself and to formulate a strategy. You know, do you want to do this festivals or do you just want to try to build some like notoriety for yourself and your name? And this is what I'm capable of. So yeah, it's definitely interesting to hear your perspective on.
But I think it makes sense from their point of view too, because like they have to do something different than what's at cinema right now. Like if they were screening something that was like, a classic action comedy at a film festival, like why would people go to a film festival? Like, wouldn't they better just go into the cinema? So they obviously have to like diversify what they show. So I think it makes sense. It's just, yeah, different.
Yeah. And what do you think will be come of your current project? Like how are you going to release it? I guess you're going to send it to your Kickstarter supporters.
But yeah, I think the thing is that at least there is. So there, I'm saying like as if all film festivals are the same. No, they're not. I think there's a whole range of them, and like there are stuff that is like sci-fi, that kind of orientation. I think that's the kind of thing that this thing would be sent to, and maybe it will have luck if it. I mean, you always want your film to be seen. Like that's the whole point. You don't want it to be made and then no one sees it. Like, what's the point? You want it to be seen by as many people as possible, and you hope that they're entertained by it. I hope they like it. That's the best thing you can hope for. And that's what festivals are good, because they technically are like an audience and a market for people to look at what you've made. So I think with something much more genre like that, like so this is quite a genre piece. It is sci-fi, it is fantasy, that has a specific festival scene to try and hopefully have a bit of luck with. And yeah, hopefully it's not that long either. I think once like things are too long, like your chances obviously exponentially go down, because they have to basically build a night around your film that way. So like something a bit smaller has obviously got a better chance, I hope.
Yeah. And how much of the film is set in that upside down room?
About 40% of the film is in the bedroom. All the kind of talking stuff, all the kind of core dramatic scenes happen in there. It's where the mum and daughter have their chats, and then we like redecorated the set into a different bedroom where another scene takes place. So that's another part of it. And then we shot all the exteriors. Basically, our school's in Soho, so we just shot like in the streets of Soho, all the location stuff, because logistically, transportation of equipment, the transportation of people, it was just you can go outside and shoot and use the school stones at the base.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Very good. Any other directions? I don't know if you want to explore. I was thinking I want to explore the concept of powerlessness a little bit more.
Sure.
If you want to talk to that, I wasn't able to formulate it into a very specific question, but yeah, I mean, that was one of the things, besides having the commonality of having made a superhero film myself, that is a hero who, in my case, he doesn't have any special powers, but he feels that he has to do something. So he's more of a Batman type hero. But he doesn't have the purse that Batman has. So he makes a costume based on just some technical know-how and goes out in the streets to fight evildoers. But in many ways, I think in my story, the hero is also born from a sense of powerlessness and like not having an alternative, like just having to go out and do something, even though he's not really capable of doing much. So that's like my perspective and the project that I've worked on, and why the description of powerlessness as a theme in your film struck me so much. And yeah, I just would like you to speak towards that in a way.
Yeah, I think my own experiences of powerlessness have come, strange enough, on social media, where like, and it's happened the last couple of days after what happened at Capitol Hill, where you go down the Twitter rabbit hole and you find that side of the world and you find those voices. And when you see their profiles and you see what they're saying and you see what they're saying to each other, and how that movement just feels so like unstoppable, like nothing's going to convince them otherwise. And you could have the best, most reasoned argument in the world, and these guys, they're not going to listen to you, and they're not going to change, and they're together and they're backing each other up. And those are the things that make me feel powerless, because I feel like I can't change that. Like I literally can't do anything to change these people's opinions. I can't stop them from being this nasty, and I can't stop them from being bigots, and I can't stop them from being that way. I want them to change because I want them to work to a better place. I think people weren't thinking this way and acting this way, obviously things would be a lot easier right now in the world, and we have a lot of common goals to try and achieve, and we can't because people are pulling in a really different direction. So like going in that, getting outside of your own bubble of people whose opinions you trust and like, and going and seeing what people are saying, and like, or even like, people who are going down that hole and have been converted to that way of thinking. And I saw someone on Facebook the other day who was like someone I knew was like the loveliest person in the world, and she was posting something about how like Joe Biden has voted to kill your babies 6 months after they're born, and like she's a reasonable person, but she's posted this and she fully believes it. And if you tell her, people are telling her it's nonsense, she's like, who knows what to believe these days? And you're like,
yeah, and
well,
that's
don't believe
right?
that.
Yeah.
But that thing is like that feels unstoppable right now. It feels like it's irreversible, and they've been allowed. These people who have started this in our country and in your country have been allowed to like create this movement unchecked. And now it's like, how do we stop this? And that's whenever I found myself down those dark pits, I feel really powerless and I feel really weak, and I feel like there's a feeling of doom. And that feeling is what I wanted to put into the film. And there is a social media element to the Millipede story, and she's a superhero, and there is a kind of antagonist on social media who's doing online bullying, and this is another example of like, what can she do? She's just a person, and she's just a person. That doesn't matter. She can punch hard. She can't stop someone, being terrible to others on social media. And that was one of those examples that I fed in.
Yeah, perfect answer to my non-question, and I 100% relate to you. And it's kind of I might be beating a dead horse because I've shared it with a couple of other guests, but one of the reasons I started the podcast was because I felt so similar to you in that, well, for me, the vitriol and the short conversation and snippets into people's minds on Facebook and Twitter that were just like, what I saw as people at their darkest moments and most fearful and looking for somebody to blame and feeding into disinformation. I felt even more isolated than I was already because of all of the pandemic lockdowns, in that I didn't feel safe communicating with people because everything is so polarized. And the nature of communication on Twitter and Facebook is so short and so easy to, for me to not be able to actually convey my intent when I do try to communicate with people. But at the same time, I felt things boiling in me like, God, people are saying the most ridiculous things. What is wrong with the world? Is everybody like this? And I don't know because I'm not communicating with anybody. And so I started the podcast to like just have a conversation like this, like, oh, Daniel feels very similar to how I do about the state of affairs and has similar senses of powerlessness, and but also thinking about ways to overcome those feelings. So I guess without revealing the the story or the climax or the ending to your film for yourself, and maybe it's separate from the film, maybe it was influenced by your writing and filming, have you thought of ways yourself to overcome this sense of powerlessness and like in some way connect to these people who seem so far gone? And I mean, we're really stuck in a difficult situation when you try to have a fact-based conversation with people to convince them that what they believe to be true is not true, or that their way of thinking is wrong based on some sort of sense of morality and or logic. But when those people look at you and just say, well, I don't know what to believe, so I'm going to believe the worst thing that I can't believe. Like, you're put in a position where that person is an absolutist. They're absolutely adhering without any flexibility to, whatever their way of thinking is. So that being said, I guess For yourself, have you found any ways to deal with these feelings of powerlessness? And then also, when it pertains to connecting with other people, have you found some strategies that you can try to connect with uh, others who may think differently?
I wish I knew. Like I wish I knew what to do and what to say. You know, I I have, if I was drafting messages to to people, or like drafting tweets to strangers, and it always just feels like, what's the point? That's the state of my mind in that moment. I'm like, well, what is the point of this? I just feel like we're going to make things worse. And who am I? Like, who am I to tell anyone
Right.
what to do? So I think what you're saying is probably making something clear, that it is about finding connection. And that's the cheesy thing about it is, if we focus on what's the same and not what's different, that would obviously make us a big difference to the world. I think there was something in the UK. It was like, obviously we had our Brexit vote, and politicians have been terrified about immigration for years. They think they can't spin it positively. They think they always felt like they had to say they were against it, otherwise they'd be in trouble with voters. And then after Brexit happened, information came out, released how important immigrants were to British society, what they offer us, what they've done for us, the part they play. And people were like, oh, okay, cool, immigration's all right. And it was like, people were like, wait, what? Like, people could be so convinced by, just facts, that they weren't that bothered, and like, people just never believed that people could be swayed to think that. So I think, yeah, connection, but it's hard. It's hard to reach out a hand to someone who's so willing to knock it away. And, who, like I said, who am I? Like, I'm not a perfect person. Who am I to suggest someone to be better? But yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you don't even have to. Yeah, I'm dealing with it too, because I mean, a lot of the folks who I have on, I'd be put in a difficult position, I guess, if I had somebody on who I just really totally disagreed with, because this is a show about creativity and exploring those things. But through creativity, we explore a lot of these issues like you did with powerlessness. And so it's almost impossible to avoid talking a little bit about society and politics. And I guess for me, where I've landed, and because I also think all the time, like, well, who am I to tell anybody anything? But at the same time, I hope that I could have interactions with people. I live in North Carolina now. I'm originally from New York, but North Carolina is a pretty red state, as they're divided. And, I don't want to just go into a store and assume that every interaction I'm going to have with people down here is ripe for some sort of socio-political conflict, just based on the fact that I might be more liberal and they might be more conservative. And I guess it's realizing that you don't have to pre-assume that those are the two tribes that we're divided into. And like, if you interact with somebody who is so strongly adhering to those identities and presuming that you are one or the other themselves, maybe you could break down that barrier by just presenting yourself as a human. So that's, that's my own strategy, is not necessarily trying to change somebody's mind at this point, but through actual interaction and presentation of myself, just connecting in a human way, regardless of those differences. Yeah.
Yeah. But and you're right, and it's just easier said than done. And I think everyone's trying to make it seem like everyone's on side A or B, when the world is so much more complicated than that. Black and white, right and wrong. It's just like, those are such basic concepts that don't really apply to society as it is. And even the terms like, liberal, conservative, I'm someone who perceives, I've been kind of almost subconsciously trained to view the term conservative as evil, like as a villainous mess. And like, that's not true. It's just the way, like, there are people on that side, and I associate people on that side with the term. and then it becomes like kind of a taboo thing in a way in my head, and that's not good either. Like that's why I've got to probably recognize in myself that I am, you know, giving attributes to people based on that, which maybe don't apply.
Right. Yeah. And I guess in terms of finding commonality, like the basis is that we're all human beings trying to like survive and do our thing. Like, so that should be the basis from which we interact, in my opinion. Do you have any other projects or concepts like the concept of powerlessness that you are, you know, and whether or not it pertains to the world we live in today or other exploring other concepts? Do you have anything specifically that you're looking to write about in the future or that you're currently exploring?
No, I feel like I want to avoid anything with a political undertone for a while.
Did writing about powerlessness and writing this story specifically, I mean, we're talking about it in the context of the world and the feeling that a lot of people are feeling these days. But when you were writing it and filming it, did it feel overtly have a political sense to you or weigh on you in that way?
I think the question for me always was like, from every script was like, what am I trying to say here? Like, what am I trying to say about the world? Because clearly I'm trying to say something. I'm not quite sure what it is yet, because it is kind of a political film, and the villain is the prime minister.
Okay.
The government is the villain in it, you know? So like, I am making a comment here, and I am talking about austerity measures, and I'm saying, you know, like there's something not quite right with what's being done. And the moral of the film in the end is kind of in a very cheesy way, like, you know, being kindness is, oh God, don't let me have this said on camera, but kindness is a superpower. So, you know, like that's kind of the moral of the story in it, and like what she can offer the world, and what we can all offer the world. So, but it was a question of like, what am I trying to say about, you know, politics today? And like, yeah, there was politics in there. And I think the more I backed away, the better it was, because I didn't want to like really position myself on a side of this too clearly, because I think that makes it less accessible. And again, it's like, who do I think I am? You know, like it's a very hard job.
Well, if you position it in too much of a way that you're passing judgment on one side, then maybe you're not showing kindness to that side, sure. Right? So no, I appreciate. I applaud that, your exploration of all of those themes. So moving away from more political concepts, is there anything else that is striking your fancy in the short term? I'm sort of starting to work on something that's a bit like, I watched The King of Staten Island when it came out, and I was really surprised by it, actually, because like this starts off the first 10 minutes and it's just like they can't get over weed, you know, like when Judd Apatow just like can't believe how amazing it is that you can smoke weed. Like, and sometimes it's a bit like tiring, like, we know, Judd, like we know you can smoke weed, we know. And then the film actually was really quite sweet, I thought, and was like really a great movie. And I kind of wanted to like write something similar. I wrote a feature last year that was like trying to be like something I thought could be commercial, or like could be, and it was like maybe didn't feel quite right. So I thought maybe I'll just write the film a bit more like this, which is just more about like people that are just, you know, trying to figure things out. And there's a plot, but it's a lot about just really the kind of enjoying being in that world a bit. And I was like, well, maybe I'll try and write something in a similar kind of style that's set in Aberdeen, because, you know, that's a part of my life that, you know, was formative. And I feel like I would quite like to write something in that world. And I had like the world's worst customer service experience when I moved flat in October. I was trying to cancel my internet, and I had like literally the worst. I've never had it worse than this in my whole life, where like from the chat to the chat, back to the phone for 3 hours of hold, and then back to the chat. And everyone I spoke to was like, you got to talk to this guy, talk to this guy. No one wants to help. And like, you end up like paying, I don't just paying them. I was like, you know what, you won. Like I paid them like the cancellation fee that what I was not meant to pay, I ended up giving up because they won. They broke me down.
And I was like, okay, so my main character does this, like this is his job. Like this is something to start off with. And then I guess the idea in my head was like, customer service is not real caring, it's like fake care. So maybe it's a film that has like, it's a person who's got to learn a bit about like, fake care versus real care, real acts of consideration, kind of building something around that in Aberdeen. And
I
like
think
how,
that sounds cool. And like juxtaposing the customer service supposed care / taking advantage of the customers and trying to get as much as you can out of them versus personal life stuff.
Yeah. So that's something I'm just sort of like outlining at the moment. Who knows if it'll go nowhere, but that's just kind of something I'm working on.
What do you think opportunities are like for you to pursue a feature film? Like how would you, is it something that you would entertain or want to entertain? And if so, like how do you go about financing and going for it?
It's tricky. Like there is funding to apply for. It's just so competitive that you have to be realistic and think that's not going to be your only way to do this. Like it'd be amazing to get like a development grant to like write the script once I have the outline or an outline for something that I think could be good for pitching. And that's where like it does help to write something to do with a country in mind, because like Norwegian ones or Scottish ones, they want like one of their conditions is it has to involve like something to do with the culture of that country. So it is good to have that in mind. I have a friend who's like going to do kind of like almost like a self-funded feature this summer. So it'd be kind of interesting to see how that process goes, because like, sure, it'll be nuts, and it'll be tough, but it is something to do. And like a lot of these funds are like, well, you kind of have to already have made a feature to get funding, or you have to have had your short screened at like X festival. And that makes sense because they have to screen things somehow. And that's obviously one way for them to be like, okay, these people are worth investing in. So yeah, for me, it's like there's still a lot of uncertainty about what will happen with my career or whatever that ends up being. So and I'm still learning how to write features. I've written a few scripts, but like they're not going to be great because I'm still learning how to write features properly, and they're completely different than writing a short in many ways. So it's really just been like every year I'm trying to do one and just hopefully they get better. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But yeah, I'm still at the start of my career and I'm still trying to learn and develop.
Would you at all fancy like trying to do a independently funded project and kind of go back to your roots of, I imagine you doing your next red carpet event potentially for something after you graduated from film school. And
yeah, I mean, I can't rule out having to go back to something more reality wise at some point if that happens. But in the meantime, just enjoy what is like a really fun life in many ways, focusing on filmmaking, and whatever happens. It's whatever happens now, like at least I took the plunge and gave it a go. I could still be in an office,
Absolutely.
Probably doing really well, probably doing great. I'm probably very successful. I probably have a very good job and maybe I bought a house, but I wouldn't have made Millipede, so you can't have it all.
No, and I mean, regardless of if you get funding or fund it yourself, I think it'll be, amazing project based on what you've accomplished so far. So, yeah, that was. It would be interesting if you came full circle to self-fund something and then have that be successible.
I think full circle means I go back to chemical engineering. I think that's the final step of my life tour.
We can't wind down on that note.
Maybe it's for the best, man. I don't know. Maybe that was my.
No. See, coming full circle is you write a script about a chemical engineer and you film somebody.
The world's most boring script. And I go into real detail. Like I'm like, no, if I'm doing a chemical engineering script, I'm going to give them the equations. We're going to learn the fine art. There's going to be pages and pages. There's just equations and heat transfer calculations and whatever.
We needed one more decimal point on this final figure.
Exactly.
This isn't accurate enough. Well, that's all in terms of questions I think I have. I don't know if you have any final words or
No, I think
another
it's good. I think it's good to sign
question.
off because I probably said so much stupid stuff that no one should ever hear. But that's fine. It's happened. It's too late. I've signed the contract.
No, it was great speaking with you, and hearing about your experience and your process, and also talking about the state of affairs in the world and how it's influenced your project, because I think it's one of those things, like, I've been shy about talking more specifically about the state of the world, but at the same time it's refreshing for me and hopefully people listening to know that a lot of people are kind of on the same page. Things are a little bit weird, and we're all thinking about ways that we can make it better. So I think exploring powerlessness and how to overcome it in your film is a step in the right direction. So I'm excited to see it, but we probably won't be able to see it. So yeah, how can we track the status and inevitably, hopefully, eventually see it?
Follow the Instagram account, the at Faraway Films. Oscar will be so glad I plugged it. We do post updates. We try to be funny. Doesn't always work out, but we're doing our best figuring out the whole Instagram thing. But yeah, we'll definitely keep updates on there, and we'll have.
And what's the website too? Because on your website you do have trailers to the films that you've put out so far.
farawayfilms.co.uk.
Yeah, and the trailers are super impressive, and I hope that by following your Instagram, I'll be alerted when they become available for viewing online when you drop them.
I'm always willing to give out a sneaky link to the true fans, so don't worry.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm making eyebrows at Daniel. Cool, man. Well, yeah, in the future, let's have Oscar on with you, because I haven't had a dual interview yet, so that'll be and
Oscar's the funny one, so that'll make it much better. Like he's the good one.
Oh, really? I thought you were the funny one. I've been having a good time.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you for staying up late. Sorry for keeping you up.
No, it's lockdown here. This is the best social life I've had, so don't worry. The pleasure's been all mine.
Awesome. Thanks, Daniel. And check out his Instagram and website link in the corner of the video or in the show notes if you're listening on a podcast catcher. And until next time, enjoy your random. Hello, my fellow randoms, and welcome to the post-show debriefing, going over key takeaways and any areas where I think I can improve my own creative process here in the production of What's Your Random. Thanks for hanging on for this little segment here. Key takeaways. It was very interesting, and I obviously related to Daniel on some of the concepts and the approach to his story. It's a hero story, and he was exploring ideas of helplessness despite somebody being a hero. Maybe you have some of the tools to be strong in a conventional sense, but you lack the tools to change the world in a more meaningful sense. So it was interesting to explore those ideas, especially considering the strange times in which we live. And yeah, I think it's always gives me a little bit of hope to talk to somebody who's thinking about these things, helplessness, powerlessness, in similar ways. And one way I think we could overcome feeling powerless is by creating. So that's one thing I certainly do is I'm troubled by an idea, a concept, or I can't just think through something on my own. I put it onto paper as a concept for a story. And a lot of times, even if that story isn't something that I'm going to share with people publicly, just for my own mental fortitude, it's helpful to explore ideas through the lens of fiction and allegory. And sometimes I do end up working through a problem and finding a real world solution. So that's my personal anecdote. I wonder how everybody else out there listening utilizes creativity in that capacity. As always, holler at us at What's Your Random to let us know if you want to weigh in there. Also, I mentioned Daniel's film, The Fantastical Millipede, is for his senior thesis for film school. But looking at the films that he's done up until this point, I see a very high level of cinematic quality and production. And I'm really excited to see where he goes in his career to maintain that level of quality in the films he produces, but also exploring some of these ideas like the ones he explores in The Fantastical Millipede. So excited for Daniel's progress from here on out. And also very interesting to know that this was not his first profession, his first target focus, that he didn't just jump into filmmaking knowing what he wanted to do with the rest of his life. It took some sorting out and maybe some risk to jump ship and swim over from a stable career in chemical engineering to filmmaking. I applaud him for doing that and pursuing his dream, and he's going to be successful because obviously he has the work ethic and level of quality to be successful. And like I said before, very excited to see what he produces from here on out. In terms of my areas where I can improve the podcast moving forward, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll notice that I changed my environment here in 2021. So my desk used to be right over there, facing a corner, and now I have a window behind me to the left, and I have a window over in front of me to the right. So I'm looking to be able to look outside and not get stuck in my creative bubble too much, and feel a little bit more openness around me. And that's coming from somebody who used to work literally in a closet. I had my my editing room for video production in a medium-sized closet. It wasn't a walk-in closet, but it was big enough that you could fit a computer and a chair. But I've changed my ways, and even for production purposes of the podcast for the video, it's easier to light this because I could put lights more easily in front of me. There's not a wall in front of me blocking and preventing me from moving lights around and moving other equipment around. Not that I have all that much equipment, but it just makes lighting the scene a little bit easier. Other like technical production stuff, I used to have a kind of crane arm desk mount microphone stand. And then I bought a small rinky-dink desktop microphone stand. And now I'm just using, this is the first time even just recording this intro and outro, I'm using a regular mic stand that sits on the floor that I had for quite a long time. And this is going to be the way to go. I'm tired of working, like hitting my hand on the desktop microphone stand, and then just the inflexibility kind of getting the right angle with that, the desktop mount crane arm, whatever. I mean, it's quite adjustable, but I just couldn't get it to come directly at my face and tilt the microphone in the way that best captures my voice. So I am using a gosh darn regular microphone stand, and I didn't do it before, again, because my position against the wall, facing a wall, didn't really give me enough room to put it right next to me in a comfortable way. But I'm going to be able to use it and unplug my mic and store it very easily. So those are like very logistical changes that have changed here at What's Your Random in 2021. And then speaking about the podcast moving forward for this, which I will call the first full season, starting 2021. And we're starting here with our 21st episode. So I think that's quite appropriate. I was initially thinking about doing one episode a week. So that would be 4 episodes in a month. And I have lowered my target a little bit towards the end of 2020, to be entirely honest. I got a little bit burnt out. I think I addressed this with Brian Lusang, but there's a lot that goes into the production of this, even though podcast production is relatively easy. Easy doesn't mean that something doesn't take time. You could mow the lawn, but it could take 3 hours, right? Mowing the lawn's pretty easy, but it is time consuming. And I far prefer doing podcasts, and I love doing this, but doing the production, the conversations are awesome and what I look forward to most, but I need to give myself the appropriate time and mental space to produce the episodes, cut them. I obviously don't do too much cutting of the episode itself, and because this is a long form podcast, this is the format I've chosen. But making the thumbnails and putting it in the timeline, making sure the audio sounds right, skimming through it and making sure there isn't any outlying sound that needs to be adjusted, and just making sure everything is as professional as possible while still using my template. It does take some time. So I have decided to scale back from a commitment to 4 episodes to a commitment to 3 episodes. That does not mean that I'm not going to try to do that does not mean that I'm not going to try to do 4, 5, or 6 episodes in a given month, but the minimum that I'm going to commit to is 3 per a month. As listeners out there, I wonder what you think about that. Is that enough? Consistency wise, I think some of these episodes are pretty long. Are you hungry for more? Do you want 2 a week? I can't achieve that right now, but that's good feedback to get from you if you really wanted to hear 2 a week. I would like to know that. If you think 1 a week is enough or 2 a month is enough, what satisfies your need for some indirect communication and interaction with creatives in this capacity through our podcast. And I say our podcast because I'm interviewing the guests just to get information for everyone who listens to What's Your Random to hear. Of course, I benefit from it and I love it, and I love doing the podcast, but it's not my podcast. It's a podcast for those creatives to reach ears of other creatives who will benefit from the messages that they have to share, the insight, the wisdom, the practicalities and process, as I always say in the introduction of the episodes. So I'm curious. Let me know your feedback. Again, you could DM me What's Your Random on Instagram and Twitter. I'm much more consistently checking Instagram, but we're curious to hear back from the audience and what you guys like most. But that being said, this year, first season, 3 episodes a month minimum, hopefully a little bit more, but setting myself up for success and to deliver the best podcast possible. So a late start to this month, but I have recorded 3 episodes on the month already, which I am producing today. I'm doing my thing. I'm recording the intro and outro. So thank you for hanging on. That is, kind of the introduction to our first season here in 2021, starting off with episode 21. And I hope you hang on for the full season, which, will be a minimum of 36 episodes. The first season, just as a kind of refresher look back at 2020, I started in October and really hit a stride in November and December putting episodes out. Crunch time, the end of December, I had to throw out a lot of episodes at once that were in my hip pocket to hit my goal of 20 episodes within the year. And I did that. And man, I wasn't really sure what to expect. And I didn't go into making this podcast with any expectations. But I'm floored by how motivating it is to speak with each of my guests on each episode, and the amount of kind of resonance. Like, I find ideas that are transferable, and also, ideas and approaches to creativity that seem to replicate one another sometimes across, with multiple creatives. And that's really fascinating. Sometimes we use different words, terminology to describe certain concepts and abstract ideas. But sometimes they feel to me to be tapping into the same essence and the same underlying concept. And I find that really interesting. And, hopefully I'll re-listen to episodes and I'll start to gather them and maybe do a special episode at some point, kind of highlighting some of the key themes that really are resonating over multiple episodes. Let's see. Another thing I'm going to try to do with a little bit more time every month, now that I'm not targeting as many episodes in a month, is maybe releasing some short episodes where I crunch down each episode into a 30-minute segment or a 45-minute segment that highlights the best points and the most interesting parts of each conversation. So that's something that I'm not going to commit to doing anything now, but it's something that I'm thinking about and strategizing on how I could best achieve that in terms of quality and also production efficiency. So I was not intending this, but it makes sense coming into season 1 that I would reflect back on our first pilot season and kind of look forward and set the bar for the first full season. And I appreciate you hanging on with me for this part of the conversation, and come back soon. We have 3 episodes a month, and I hope you listen to them all and share them all. And most importantly, I hope that you enjoy your random and all the random there is, all of the content that's being created by other fellow randoms. Go out there and enjoy it.